Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Jujutsu Kaisen. Unlock the 8 secret arts at the start. Chapter 11. On the blue sky, the white clouds seemed to be squeezed into various shapes by a big hand, floating quietly in the air. A 7-year-old boy, ignoring his mother who was chattering in front of him, stared at the boy flying by the windowsill on the 12th floor with a dull look. Mom, a big brother flew past just now. Okay, I won't write homework for my mother. I learned to lie like your dead father. Come on, come here. My mother will add a buff for you. Afterwards, the belt whip of the ghost cry and wolf howling, and the cry of the boy's grievances and baba became the main theme of the room. Tisk tusk, my mother is really grumpy now. A bright white light stepped on Ryuiki's feet, floating in the air, looking at the bear child who was beaten up. There was a gloating expression on his face. Divine armament 100 refinements, refining everything. The white light under his feet was just a piece of tile he picked up casually, and after a few refining, he created a flying cursed tool that was enough to make jujutsu masters jealous. And the hapless bear kid did not lie. The moment Ryuiki arrived in Osaka, he happened to be seen by this hapless child with sharp eyes, but Ryuiki reacted very quickly. A simple cursed tool put oneself into a semi-invisible state, and also gave the bear child a love education. Osaka, it's been a long time since I saw you. A breeze slowly passed, shaking Ryuiki's black hair. He looked condescendingly at the steel forest at his feet, looked at the group of small humans as small as ants, and sighed softly. The originally cloudless sky was inexplicably stained with a layer of haze. At the same moment, in the secret room, on the head mountain, the man in black suddenly opened his eyes. An earth-shattering curse power burst out all over the body, and the surrounding space was wrapped in pictures and texts transformed by countless purple curse powers. It seems that countless souls of injustice appeared behind him. Zenin Ryuiki. It's finally here. He gritted his teeth and squeezed a word out of his teeth, and the bitterness in the words was almost about to take shape. Hee, the speed is so fast. Welcome to Osaka, I hope to have fun. The fox-faced man on the side chuckled lightly, looking at a clearing with his eyes. It seemed to partition the space, looking at Ryuiki who was hundreds of miles away. And Ryuiki seems to have some feelings, her eyes condensed slightly, and she looked at the sky with a smile. It's like looking at the fox man in kimono. Interesting. Interesting. The two uttered such a sentence at the same time, but one was joking and the other was full of disdain. Ryuiki retracted his gaze, and his figure flickered quickly in the air. Like a silver thunder, it appeared in a sparsely populated lane in a blink of an eye. Although he doesn't care about being photographed, it's always good to be less troublesome. Otherwise, being followed by those boring media is like being surrounded by a group of flies and buzzing. For the dragon, although it is easy to slap the ants to death, he has no interest in moving his claws. Of course, if it is some ants who do not live or die, it is a different matter. Just like this moment, Ryuiki, who came out of the alley, tidied up his clothes, a white sportswear, and his handsome appearance, like a butter niche about to debut. At the entrance of the alley, a group of punks with their hair dyed colorfully looked at each other and looked at Ryuiki with a weird smile. Hey, that handsome boy over there, do you want to make friends? The head of the red-haired coxcomb head, wearing a buckle on his nose, walked towards Ryuiki with duck steps. Me. Forget it. Ryuiki stretched out a finger in surprise and pointed at himself. Huh. Brother, is it so shameless for brothers? The name of our speeding car party is very useful throughout Osaka. If you don't become friends, you will be enemies. Coxcomb came to Ryuiki's face, dangled his triangular eyes, stretched out his scarlet tongue and licked his dry lips, with a deep threat in his tone. Whoosh whoosh. A butterfly knife in his hand swung quickly, like a beautiful butterfly dancing between his fingers. There is an extra hole on such a handsome face. I don't know how many girls feel distressed. Make friends, lend the money you have to brothers to have a good time, that's it. Coxcomb smiled grinningly, and the little brothers behind him were even more watching the show. They squatted on the ground, waiting for Ryuiki to come up with the money obediently. They don't know how many times they have used this trick. Like this kind of white flour noodles, they are all oily noodles. A little frightened, the white money is all their prostitution tonight. You play with the knife like this, Don't you worry about your fingers falling off. Ryuiki didn't give up the money as soon as they saw the knife, but said something inexplicable. As soon as this sentence came out, all the gangsters on the opposite side were taken aback. Chapter 12. A trace of anger could not help appearing on Coxcomb's face. Damn. Are you special? Ah. Before the words came to an end, the coxcomb suddenly let out a howl like a pig. Big brother. Oh my god. Call the emergency call. A lot of blood. A lot of blood. Everyone present became extremely frightened at the same moment, their mouths opened uncontrollably, and they screamed in panic. The bright red blood was as thick as paste, and 5 fingers fell neatly to the ground, lying irregularly in a pool of blood. The left hand of the coxcomb head that used to dance the butterfly knife no longer has a finger. The black butterfly knife, now out of the control of the coxcomb head, was shrouded in a faint blue, floating quietly in front of the coxcomb head. The scarlet on the blade seemed to be faintly flowing. He opened his mouth wide, trying to vent his pain, but an inexplicable fear appeared in his heart, making him afraid to make a sound. Do you deserve to be my friend? Ryuiki's tone is still gentle, like a young man, but those poor guys who are staring at him like hungry wolves, who dare not move, their eyes are indeed full of endless fear. Damn it. Why would I provoke such a monster? The coxcomb head wailed madly in his heart, but his body seemed to be petrified, and he dared not move. Puff, puff, puff. Sudden. In the alleyway, bursts of extremely concealed curse power appeared, and the gangsters fell to the ground uncontrollably with horrified expressions on their faces. His eyes were pale, and he fainted without exception. Gia, Mr. Zenin, it's a great honor to be here. Please forgive me for the poor reception. A very funny voice rang in Ryuiki's ear, like Donald Duck with his nose pinched, croaking. Da da da. The sound of footsteps gradually sounded. Deep in the alley, a short man walked out. The dwarf man, facing Ryuiki's back, bowed down in a very standard manner. His respectful attitude made him feel like Ryuiki's loyal slave. But from the beginning to the end, Ryuiki didn't even turn his head, looked at the coxcomb head that had fainted on the ground, and curled his mouth. The moon-white eyes flashed a few boring words. It's kind of interesting. It's really interesting that a jujutsu teacher who was born with jujutsu in his body was turned into this alive by you. Ryuiki's voice is not loud, but it sounds like a thunder in the ears of a dwarf. The dwarf's expression trembled, and a flash of astonishment flashed across his pus-packed face. You can see through jujutsu's foundation with just a glance, this guy is really not easy. No matter what he thought in his mind, the dwarf still had that respectful look on his face, and his tone was meticulous, like a servant who had been trained for many years, docile and well-behaved. Mr. Zenin joked. Compared with Mr. S magical jujutsu, these are just small tricks. Little trick. Haha, says this a little trick to test me. Ryuiki's voice was suddenly erratic, as if he would disappear in front of the dwarf in the next moment. Although the voice did not contain any emotions, for some reason, the dwarf had always been keen intuition to tell him that the man in front of him was in an extremely dangerous state at this moment. He is now facing an abyss in front of him. If he takes a wrong step, he will be overwhelmed. As his second-level jujutsu master, he still has no sense of security. Sir, the villain doesn't mean anything like that. The dwarf became more humble, and the bean-sized sweat appeared on his forehead. In the eyes of outsiders, he is the messenger of the Dark Knight and the spokesperson of the mysterious organization that walks outside. In Osaka, every jujutsu teacher will give him 3 points, and even the Jujutsu Association of Osaka will give him 3 points. However, in front of this man, he knew that he did not have the slightest qualification to be respected. Really? Ryuiki turned around slowly, jokingly in his eyes, and took a deep look at the dwarf. My patience is limited, don't try to challenge my bottom line. The surrounding air seemed to become thinner with Ryuiki's tone. Understood, sir. I understand. The villain never meant that. That's good, lead the way. Just as the dwarf was about to be overwhelmed by that terrifying aura, that aura suddenly closed. Ryuiki's voice has also become extremely warm from the coldness before. With the iconic faint smile on the corner of his mouth, he looked at the dwarf. This smile should definitely make people feel like a spring breeze, but when it fell in the eyes of the dwarf, He did not know why. Instinctively the back was cold, and a chill passed from the soles of the feet. On top of the Tianling guy. Moody and unpredictable. Such a guy is really only 16 years old. For the first time, the dwarf doubted the intelligence capabilities of his organization. Even the flattering smile on his face did not change, and he stood bowed in front of Ryuiki. Okay, Master Zenin, please here, the special car for you has arrived. Lead the way. Chapter 13. The dwarf who got the answer didn't dare to say a word. Although he still bowed forward, the pace under his feet was indeed getting faster and faster. Not long after the two figures left the alley. On the walls around the alleyway, strange blood vessels suddenly appeared, and the walls also began to turn dark red, like a huge heart, surrounded by thick blood vessels, and dirty blood wandering around the walls. The coxcomb head, who had fainted, slowly stood up from the ground. The expression on his face was very indifferent. Looking at everything around him, he swayed his palm at random. An astonishing scene appeared, only to see his left hand with its fingers removed, and new flesh and blood quickly appeared. In the blink of an eye, the fingers had returned to their original state. Zenin Ryuiki, I remember you. Ha ha. ... How long will it take? Ryuiki was lying halfway on the seat of the sports car, looking a bit drowsy. The dwarf who drove by the side didn't dare to show any negligence. Hearing Ryuiki's question, he quickly replied. All right, we will be here soon, Mr. Zenin. Let me help you. Ryuiki said lazily, seemingly casually stretched out his palm, with bursts of faint blue, and stroked the surrounding car body. Rumble. The sports car was instantly blessed by something. The speed was so fast that there was a bit of afterimages. This is Cursed Tool. Turn ordinary sports cars into Cursed Tool in an instant. It works. He will definitely be able to repair the pheasant sword. The dwarf was in ecstasy. The sports car was speeding, and in less than half a minute, the car stopped in front of a shopping mall. Mr. Zenin, you are finally here. Welcome to Yuanlu meeting. A cold voice sounded, and the dwarf who stopped the car quickly opened the door and stepped aside. Ryuiki's body lying on the seat did not move. His eyes were half open and half closed, as if he hadn't woken up yet, and he aimed at the man in black standing at the door of the mall. The shopping mall that was supposed to be full of people now does not even have a single figure. Summer in Osaka was supposed to be a day for countless office workers to carve, and the mall sales have touched countless people's hearts, but now it is not a mall, even if the whole street is lifeless. With a radius of 10 miles, it is like a dead city. The man in black did not conceal the powerful curse power on his body, and the dark purple curse power surrounds him, setting him off like a monster. The face hidden under the black robe was not real, but Ryuiki noticed a familiar breath. Oh, I said why this mantra is a bit familiar, it's you, skeleton. Ryuiki continued to speak quietly. It seems that I'm right. Even if you swallow a part of your soul, it won't affect you. You. Ryuiki's words touched the man in black. The humiliation given by Ryuiki, which made him sleepless at night, and the pain that deepened in his soul, even in the past few days, still faintly pained, he shouted. The curse power burst out all over, like a storm, sweeping everything around him unscrupulously. Rumble. Do you want to do it? Ryuiki looked at the man in black unmoved. The smile on his face did not change, but he did have some thoughts in his heart. This is the main body. 6 Immortal Thief Treasury can't absorb the magic power at will like before. Tut, it's a pity. Ryuiki, who was planning to irritate the other party and come to a buffet, was quite disappointed, but the other party clearly knew that there was no way to take Ryuiki at this moment. Only by facing Ryuiki in person can he feel how powerful the boy in front of him is. Although the power of the curse was not obvious, it was based on the information sent back by the part of the soul that had fallen before. At least he can't move Ryuiki until he finishes repairing the pheasant sword. Ha! Come with me. The man in black suppressed his anger, tried his best to restrain the murderous intent that surged on his body, and walked forward without looking back. Ryuiki didn't continue to provoke the bad-tempered man in black, shrugging his shoulders. Following behind the opponent, the dwarf stood at the door of the mall like a guard, and seemed not qualified to enter the mall. The moment Ryuiki stepped into the mall, Suddenly, a cloud of smoke appeared in the surrounding area, and there was curse power in the smoke, so that Ryuiki couldn't really see the surrounding scenes. After a while, the two appeared in a secret room. Inside the room, an extremely conspicuous crystal cabinet is placed in the middle. A long and slender Japanese traditional longsword is placed in the middle of the cabinet. It is obviously only the most common longsword, but it seems to have a certain magical power. Even Ryuiki's eyes cannot help but be attracted, although it is only a short moment, but it also made Ryuiki vigilant. Divine Armament 100 Refinements. First refine the original mind, and master the 100% progress Divine Armament 100 Refinements. Ryuiki's mind should be as tough as a rock, but even so, there was a moment of loss of consciousness. The man in black on the side was even more unbearable. Although Ryuiki couldn't see his face clearly, he could imagine the greed on that face through the fluctuations of the spell's power. Ahem. Is this cursed tool to be repaired? Chapter 14. Ryuiki gave a light cough and woke up the man in black, who was completely attracted. Can you fix it? Even if the man in black was awakened, his voice was still blurred, as if he was still intoxicated by the sword. My rules, you know. Ryuiki didn't answer the man in black's question directly, but glanced at the man in black. Pong. The man in black did not speak, and gently waved his palm. The dark purple curse power seemed to have opened some kind of seal, and a burst of smoke suddenly rose on the floor of the secret room. The smoke cleared. 3 cursed spirits whose whole bodies were locked by chains appeared on the ground. Although they were unable to move under the chains, the powerful curse was hard to conceal. There are 3 first-class cursed spirits. 3 first-level cursed spirits. This is our sincerity. The man in black said indifferently, as if he didn't care about these 3 powerful first-level cursed spirits at all. Ryuiki rubbed his chin. Unexpectedly, this group of guys actually have the means to capture the first-level cursed spirit. Okay, the repair process. I don't like being watched. No, this sword is extremely honorable. You must repair it under my supervision. This is the rule. The man in black refused Ryuiki's request without thinking. And Ryuiki smiled slightly after hearing the other party's words. Rules. Do errands with me, what I say is. Ryuiki's voice paused slightly. Rule. When the words fell, a terrifying killing intent broke out from the man in black, and his murderous intent was staring at Ryuiki unabashedly, but Ryuiki did still look at the long sword indifferently, without even looking at the man in black. You wanna die? Hey, if it wasn't for 3 first-class cursed spirits, you would already be a dead person. Want to try? The dark purple curse power outlines mysterious lines, forming behind the man in black. Ryuiki didn't speak, but the pendant on his chest showed a terrifying cold light. 9 ghosts. Listen to him. Just as the 2 of them were facing each other, the voice of a teenager echoed in the room. Humph. The black-clothed man's face was blue and white, but he still snorted, restraining his jujutsu. Walking towards the door without looking back, when he went out, he turned his head, looked at Ryuiki, and said in a gloomy tone. You'd better fix it well, otherwise, hee. He sneered and walked out of the door. And Ryuiki's gaze also became cold. It was a kind of coldness whose killing intent was compressed to the limit. Any existence that dares to threaten oneself already has a way to find death. The best way to solve the trouble is to deal with the people who will cause trouble. In his heart, the man in black had already been sentenced to death by him. What's the name of this sword? Ryuiki calmed his mind and asked softly. He knew the person who had spoken before, still watching this secret room at this moment. Are you sure you want to know? Some things are better if you get confused. The voice of the teenager sounded faintly. Name. Ryuiki uttered 2 words indifferently, and then stopped talking. After a long while, the voice of a teenager rang again in the room. This sword is called the grass pheasant sword. Understood. Ryuiki was not shocked by the reputation of this thunderous sword. 5 minutes, come in for acceptance, now, step back. You. The young man's voice was a bit angry, and he had never dared to speak to him like this. I hope you can fix it well. Wang. Shocking. At the moment when the young man's voice disappeared, countless blues appeared, instantly covering the entire room, and the countless chi machines that crisscrossed and connected to this secret room were all twisted. The connection is broken. The fox-face boy suddenly stood up from Rentu Mountain, his eyes were deeply shocked. After decades of effort, the secret room created by countless members of the organization, and the vitality that was deeply connected to the high level of the entire organization, was actually cut off by a 16-year-old kid. Zenin Ryuiki. Who are you? The Zenin family absolutely cannot let your monster out. The fox-faced boy roared, his eyes daring not to leave for a moment the door of the secret room. Everything inside was covered up, and there was no glimpse of it. And when he was extremely nervous, Ryuiki in the secret room unceremoniously opened the crystal cabinet, and the pheasant sword, which they regarded as an artifact, was held in his hand like a toy. He threw out a few sword flowers. Too light, not easy. Ryuiki sat on the crystal cabinet and stroked the blade of the pheasant sword. From the outside of the United States, there is no problem with the whole sword. The blade is smooth and the blade is sharp, but Ryuiki, who has mastered divine armament 100 refinements, knew it at first sight. The soul of this sword is broken. That is, the curse in the pheasant sword was torn apart by some kind of force. This trauma may be irreversible for others. But repairing this kind of scar is just a matter of convenience for him, and it is not even troublesome, it is not worth mentioning. I saw a blue light appearing on his hand stroking the sword body. With a mysterious aura, the blue light invaded into the sword body. Click. The pheasant sword shuddered violently, as if something was being bred. A burst of rich curse continued to emerge on the pheasant sword, and the almost substantial aura was like a huge wave that drowned everything. The whole secret room was flooded in an instant. The 3 first-class cursed spirits tied up on the ground, the body that had been struggling began to tremble crazily, as if fearing something. Chapter 15. Ryuiki, who noticed this change, nodded secretly, not surprised. After all, it is a super cursed tool, and the curse in it makes the first cursed spirit tremble with fear. It is also normal. You should know that there is a difference between the first-class cursed spirit and the special class cursed spirit. Base. Ryuiki copied and drafted the pheasant sword and swung it at the 3 first-level cursed spirits. He wanted to see the power of the pheasant sword, but then an amazing scene appeared. As Ryuiki's sword was swung, a dark brown half-moon sword energy instantly appeared at the front end of the grass sword. The terrifying sword aura, with the power to tear everything, went straight to the cursed spirit on the ground and cut it away. In a flash, those 3 extremely tyrannical cursed spirits were completely erased by that slash, and the tyrannical curse power suppressed the quartet. Yeah, 6 immortal thief treasury swallow. Ryuiki, who didn't expect the grass pheasant sword to have such a terrifying power, was shocked, seeing the curse power that was about to collapse. His hands were sealed, his mouth was slightly opened, 3 cursed spirits, all of his curse power was swallowed into his body. 6 immortal thief treasury ran wildly, transforming all the spell power, and quickly moisturizing Ryuiki's body. Fear. Looking at the grass pheasant sword, Ryuiki couldn't help sighing. This kind of power is beyond imagination. The strength of the first-level cursed spirit has reached a level that is difficult for ordinary people to understand. Although Ryuiki can easily solve it, it is absolutely impossible to do it right now. The 3 cursed spirits were erased and there was no trace of the existence of Silk. This not only shocked Ryuiki, but also set a wake-up call in his heart. Since the system was turned on, Ryuiki only felt that he was invincible. Except for the guy Gojo Satoru, there was no threat anymore. The appearance of the pheasant sword undoubtedly broke his state of mind. If a first-level jujutsu master sneaked on him with the pheasant sword, the consequences would be unimaginable. Ryuiki, who was lost in thought, did not notice. The pheasant sword in his hand suddenly showed a pure darkness. It was a kind of thing that could swallow everything. Endless eternal night. Mortal, do you want power? Do you want the power to hold everything in your hands? Want to rule as the power of the world? A loud voice suddenly sounded, awakening Ryuiki, who was thinking. Does that voice have endless temptation? Everything in the secret room began to become illusory, and in a vague way, countless treasures and beauties appeared all around. Piles of gold, colorful jewels, and diamonds all over the floor appeared in front of Ryuiki in a daze. Countless beautiful women appeared beside him, twisted the wonderful ketone body, wrapped around him, and exhaled gently in his ear. Facing the sudden change, Ryuiki's complexion is as usual, his heart is like a rock, and he doesn't move. Is this curse who lives in the pheasant sword? But so. Ryuiki's frivolous tone was somewhat disdainful. His tone seemed irritated, and that curse suddenly appeared in the room. Pong. The breath of horror crazily emerged on the pheasant sword, and the illusions that represented countless desires were all shattered. The pheasant sword escaped from Ryuiki's palm and floated out of thin air. Hum. Buzzing. Click. Along the blade of the grass pheasant sword, countless curse powers are linked together, and continue to condense into a huge snake head, then the second, third, fourth. A huge demon from the ancient world suddenly appeared in front of Ryuiki. 8 completely different snake heads shook lightly, 16 eyes were as scarlet as red cape gooseberry, and the huge body was covered with moss, cypress trees and fur, and the stomach was dripping with blood, as if it had been eroded. Exudes bursts of blood and stench. The 8 thick tails flicked wildly behind it, and each flick set off a scorching high temperature. It revived again with the most primitive curse of mankind. Scarlet eyes with unparalleled madness, contempt for everything in the world, as high as a god. Mortal, you know who you are talking to. You should treat me as a god. The biggest snake head in the middle was vomiting the letter, with scarlet eyes staring at Ryuiki, his voice exploded like thunder. The other 7 heads also echoed the same words. The entire space was filled with his sky-shattering roar, and the trembling power surged over it unscrupulously. Storms of fishy air emerged from its mouth. Yaki Orochi. Ryuiki looked up at the huge monster in front of him, apparently he recognized the identity of the monster. One of the most terrifying legends in the entire Fusang myth is a terrifying demon who swallows blood and shelters the wicked. Hachimatato Luji, the culprit responsible for flooding all rivers, one of the most powerful demons in the myth of Fusang for thousands of years, represents the source of all nightmares. It is Yaki Orochi. The legendary Yaki Orochi swallows the sun and the moon, and wherever it passes, it must be covered by violent storms. This is a myth that has been circulated for thousands of years, and the birth of curse is. Super hypothetical cursed spirit. A mortal. Give everything to me, I can fulfill all your wishes. Yaki Orochi looked down at the tiny human in front of him. Like a slave owner who gives gifts to his servants, his tone is arrogant and cruel. Haha, interesting, a crippled curse. Also dare to speak out. Ryuiki looked at the huge 8-headed snake in front of him violently. There was no ripple in the tone due to the appearance of this legendary creature. Still understatement, as if everything in the world is in his grasp. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.